As months turned into years, the sound of war became a part of daily life. Sirens, blackouts, and broken streets were no longer new to the people of Ukraine. Yet, through every hardship, a quiet strength began to rise. The strength that no missile could destroy, the will to stand. Russia still had weapons, but Ukraine now had something far greater. A purpose. It was no longer just a fight for land or politics. It was a fight for identity, for freedom, and for the future of an entire generation. Every destroyed home became a reason to rebuild. Every fallen soldier became a symbol of courage, and every child who smiled under a broken roof reminded the world that Ukraine's heart was still beating. The war had started with fear, but it was ending with faith. Faith in unity, in truth, and in the power of the human spirit. By this time, Ukraine's psychological strategy had matured into one of the most powerful tools of the conflict. The country learned how to fight not just on the battlefield, but inside the enemy's mind. Through information, resilience, and moral strength, it began to change the narrative of the war itself. Russia's propaganda machine, once feared for its influence, started collapsing under the weight of reality. Truth became Ukraine's loudest weapon. Every intercepted call, every recorded act of brutality, every story of survival reached millions of hearts around the world. The image of Ukraine shifted from victim to victor, not because the war had ended, but because the spirit of defeat had disappeared. Instead, the Russia cracks of doubt began to spread among soldiers and civilians alike. Why were they fighting? For what purpose? The slogans of power no longer inspired anyone. The war that was supposed to bring glory had brought only grief. Ukraine had done what few nations ever could. It turned suffering into strength and despair into defiance. This was the final layer of its genius plan: to win the war not by force, but by breaking the will to fight on the other side. When morale fades, even the strongest army begins to crumble. And as Russia's confidence weakened, Ukraine's hope grew unstoppable. Across the country, life refused to die. Schools reopened in underground shelters. Artists painted murals on shattered walls. Farmers returned to their fields even with the sound of artillery in the distance. It was as if the nation had decided that no weapon could destroy its identity. The true battlefield was no longer in the trenches. It was in the hearts of people. And in that battle, Ukraine had already won. Around the world, nations began to recognize the deeper lesson of this war, that courage, unity, and intelligence can stand against tyranny and survive. Ukraine had taught humanity that modern war is not only about soldiers and tanks, it is about the endurance of will. The war that was meant to break Ukraine instead forged it into steel. And that steel was now sharper than any sword, stronger than any army. The genius of Ukraine's strategy was never in ending the war with a single strike, but in showing that no power can conquer a people who refuse to surrender. One day, when the last siren falls silent and the skies grow clear again, the world will remember not just the battles or the borders, but the lesson written in courage, that the greatest victory is not destroying your enemy. It is surviving everything they tried to destroy you with. And that is how Ukraine's genius move turned a war of force into a triumph of will. When the smoke of endless battles began to fade, and the echoes of artillery slowly disappeared into the distance, Ukraine stood among the ruins, wounded but undefeated. The war had taken everything material, but it had failed to take what truly mattered: spirit. The nation that was supposed to fall in 3 days had stood firm for years, rewriting the very laws of survival. And as the world watched, something extraordinary began to happen. Hope started to return. The streets, once empty, were alive again. Markets reopened, children walked to school. Laughter returned to the neighborhoods that had once known only silence. In the ruins of destroyed cities, new buildings began to rise, not as symbols of wealth, but as proof that life always finds a way to rebuild itself. But the real transformation was invisible. It was happening in minds. Ukraine had emerged not only as a country that survived invasion, but as a teacher to the world. It had shown that power no longer lies in the number of tanks or missiles, but in the unity of people who believe in a purpose larger than fear. The new strategy that Ukraine unveiled, its so-called genius move, was never just a military blueprint. It was a new philosophy of resistance, a belief that wars of the future would be won not by destruction, but by innovation, truth, and global solidarity. This vision spread beyond borders. Across Europe and beyond, nations began studying Ukraine's methods, the hybrid of digital warfare, economic resilience, and moral strength. Universities, military academies, and tech centers analyzed how a smaller nation had managed to outmaneuver a global superpower without matching its size. Ukraine became more than a country. It became a symbol of what humanity can achieve when cornered by aggression. Its strategies reshaped international defense policies. Its courage reignited discussions about freedom, and its survival inspired oppressed nations around the world to rise. Yet, amidst these victories, Ukraine never forgot its scars. Every street still carried the memories of loss. Every family had a story that began in tragedy but ended in perseverance. And through these stories, a new sense of national identity was forged, not in fear of the past, but in pride of survival. The war had transformed Ukraine's people into strategists, inventors, and protectors of truth. The young generation that grew up during air raids and blackouts became the architects of a future built on resilience. They learned that peace cannot be begged for. It must be built, layer by layer, through unity and purpose. Internationally, the tides began to shift. The cracks inside Russia deepened economic strain, political unrest, and moral exhaustion began to surface. The empire that once threatened Europe now faced the consequences of its own aggression. The very machine it built to destroy others had begun to corrode from within. And while that collapse unfolded slowly, Ukraine moved forward swiftly, rebuilding alliances, strengthening its economy, and turning every hardship into strategy. The nation that once defended itself now became the one setting examples for others to follow. The genius of Ukraine's move was never about instant victory. It was about inevitable victory. A victory born not from aggression, but from endurance. A victory that proved the strongest weapon in the modern world is not power, it is purpose. As dawn rises over Kyiv, the light reflects on a land reborn. The war has changed everything, but it could not change what Ukraine stands for. Freedom, unity, and the unbreakable will to exist. The world will remember this, not as the story of a nation that was attacked, but as the story of a people who refused to vanish, and in doing so, changed the course of history forever. And that is how Ukraine's genius move did not just end a war, it began a new chapter for humanity. When Ukraine's resistance turned into resilience, and resilience turned into strategy, the world began to change with it. What started as a local conflict soon transformed into a global awakening, a moment where nations, governments, and people finally understood that power was no longer measured in nuclear stockpiles or armies, but in adaptability, intelligence, and unity. Ukraine had not only survived, it had forced the world to rethink the meaning of modern warfare. For decades, military doctrines were built on size, intimidation, and control. But now, Ukraine's methods, built on speed, digital precision, and psychological strength, were being studied in every defense academy across the globe. Generals who once spoke of numbers now spoke of networks. Politicians who once feared isolation now saw the power of global solidarity. And nations that once stayed neutral began to realize that silence in the face of aggression is its own kind of defeat. The European Union tightened its unity like never before. NATO found renewed purpose. The West discovered that democracy, when defended with conviction, can be stronger than any regime built on fear. But beyond politics, the greatest change happened in hearts. The image of Ukraine, a nation smaller, poorer, but unbroken, became a living symbol of hope for every people under oppression. From Asia to Africa, movements for freedom looked toward Kyiv as proof that courage can rewrite destiny. Ukraine's story became a global mirror, reflecting what humanity could achieve when it refuses to surrender. The genius of Ukraine's move had done something far greater than ending one war. It had redrawn the map of international power. Russia, once the symbol of dominance, found itself surrounded not by enemies, but by consequences. The nations that had once feared it now prepared to defend themselves, not through weapons, but through alliances and information. Technology became the new shield of the modern world. Countries began building digital defense networks, cybersecurity armies, and AI-driven intelligence systems modeled after Ukraine's approach. It was the birth of a new age, one where code could protect cities and truth could destroy lies. And yet, the deeper message of Ukraine's victory was not military at all. It was moral. It reminded the world that truth, when carried with conviction, spreads faster than propaganda. That justice, when defended by unity, can silence tyranny. As the dust of war settled, Ukraine's blue and yellow flag came to represent more than a nation. It represented a principle, a promise to every future generation that freedom is not granted by peace treaties, but earned through courage. The global order that emerged after the war was not the same as before. Economies realigned, alliances grew stronger, and the very idea of security evolved. Superpowers began to understand that fear alone cannot control the world anymore. Inspiration can, and that inspiration came from a nation that refused to kneel. Ukraine's genius move did not only change its fate, it changed how the entire world viewed conflict, resistance, and unity. The lesson was clear. In an age of information, the strongest weapon is truth. In an age of fear, the greatest defense is hope. Years from now, when historians write about this era, they will not just tell the story of a war. They will tell the story of a transformation, how one nation's courage reshaped the world. From the ashes of destruction rose a new understanding of power. That in the battle between might and right, it is not the loudest who wins, but the one who never stops believing. And that is how Ukraine's genius move became more than a strategy. It became a revolution of the human spirit.